Formula Junior was an Italian idea to enable their young drivers to gain experience at reasonable cost in single-seater cars fitted with engine, gearbox and brakes from a series production touring car recognized by the FIA. In 1959, the Formula was granted international status, but Continental cars took all the honors that year. But the introduction in October 1959 of the new Ford Anglia, powered by the 105E engine, marked the turning point for Britain. And the 105E, installed in a Lotus chassis, produced a classic combination. Like love and marriage, Ford and Lotus went together like a horse and carriage.
The first Lotus that I had the joy to use or see was a Scalextric's car back in the day with my brother. I had a Jim Clark Green Lotus and my brother had Graham Hill in the BRM, but we were just obsessed by race cars as kids and British Grand Prix with Ronnie Peterson and Emerson Fittipaldi, and so that's where my love of Lotus comes from. And then I'd driven vintage cars and a few sports cars, but it wasn't until I went down to the first Monaco Historic Grand Prix to help Sean Danaher run Lindsay Owen Jones that I sat on a plane by accident next to the Lotus photographer and book publisher William Taylor and Colin Chapman's son Clive, who had started Classic Team Lotus back then, and they were all going down to run the race cars, and I got friendly with them and met them over the weekend. And when we returned back to the UK, William Taylor said that he had a Lotus Formula Junior car and he was very busy. Would I perhaps like to drive it for him? And I got a chance to drive a Lotus 20 Formula Junior, and I was absolutely hooked and drove for him for a few years. Knew that I got to find one, and was lucky enough to get a gold Lotus 20 in pieces that came from America through Jim Bennett, who also had a Lotus 76 Formula One car, which I then got to drive later on. And that's how the whole thing started for me in historic motorsport. And it led to this car, which is an unbelievable find because of Goodwood. I met a start line marshal called Judy Derrisley, and she had inherited her father's race car, and they lived on Hayling Island, and the connection led me to acquire this car that we see here today. This is Peter War's Lotus 20 Formula Junior, a Lotus Components car that he drove for a couple of seasons as a young man when he was the manager of Lotus Components, and in those 2 seasons he had 6 podiums and famously won the Nürburgring Formula Junior race. And we've managed to find out all this history through speaking to Yvonne War, who's been massively helpful, and also down at Goodwood, because this being a car that was used for advertising purposes for Peter War, because he was the marketing manager as well as running the whole of Lotus Components that sold cars to members of the public and other teams. The car was used for a promotion for Vedol Oils, and the CEO of Vedol Oils was a man called John Paul Getty. Now, if you've not seen Danny Boyle's series called Trust about the Getty family, it's absolutely fascinating. John Paul Getty was put down in the Guinness Book of Records as being the world's wealthiest private individual, yet at 70 years old he came down to Goodwood in February in the freezing cold of 1962 and drove this car as part of a promotion for his oil brand, which was remarkable because he made an investment in 1949 in a barren piece of sandy desert area on the border of Saudi Arabia, and of course the prospectors found oil, and they managed to get 16 million barrels of oil a year from that concession for 60 years, and that is how the Getty wealth was built. But that was at Goodwood, and we are going back to Goodwood for the members meeting in March, where this car last ran back in '62 in this format, Formula Junior, in these colours. So the reason we're here today at RM Wilson with Rob and Sam is to check the car over before we get to the members meeting, but also so that I can have the pedals fitted, because that is one thing that as a driver you want dead right, because you want to be able to heel and toe and get off the clutch and brace yourself against a pedal that's over here, down on this side. This is a rare opportunity really to see inside the cockpit of a single seater, especially a Lotus. Their pedals were just beautifully minimalist, and the way they've been put together with little grip pads that are serrated on here so that your feet don't slip off. Sitting in the cockpit here gives you an ideal opportunity to see the driver laid back at 50 degrees, which was a revolutionary design idea from Costin and Chapman for '61. And what that did was it gave the car 30% less frontal area and was much more slippery aerodynamically. With any luck, I'm going to be much closer to the ground on race day. Sam, we've just got it off the dyno. It sounded strong from outside. What sort of power is this four-cylinder Cosworth giving us?
Well, it's making between about 125 and 130 horsepower, so it's pretty strong. I think it's going to propel you fairly well.
In a car this light, which is under 400 kilos, that we have to ballast up to the minimum weight, what sort of brake horsepower per tonne is this giving us?
Well, it's over the magic 250 per tonne, so you know, it's not going to hang around.
It really is like a mini Formula One car, isn't it?
It is a baby Grand Prix car, and in modern times, the lap speeds are comparable to a contemporary to the period Formula One car. So yeah, they're quick little cars.
Sam, we've got the engine in now, and we've got the pedals sorted out. What have we got left to get us to testing for next week?
Well, we've got to get the gearbox in, get the drive shafts on. We've got to hook the brakes up. Radiator on, and then we're about there. We're about ready to go.
The best place to see these Formula Junior cars is at the Goodwood Revival, and we will be at the circuit at the members meeting, where you will see these cars in their environment pulling 10,000 revs. You are so connected to a car like this, that far off the ground. All the induction noise, ducking and diving with the other drivers, there's nothing like it.
With a ground clearance of 3 3/4 inches and an overall height of 32 inches, the 1961 Formula Junior Lotus has all the sleek good looks of a thoroughbred. Independent suspension and disc brakes are included in the specification, but a shoehorn to help the driver in is an optional extra.
The Goodwood test day. We've just managed to get through FIA scrutineering, and the boys have pulled a bit of an all-nighter to get us here to test the car, shake it down. We're just adjusting carburation and setting up the dampers, and we'll be soon out just after lunch.
I think Dad bought it, probably late '64, because he only raced tin tops that year. But when I was very little, like at the Grand Prix, when he raced that, whenever we were at Silverstone, if I behaved myself, he'd sit me on his lap in it and we'd go blatting down the main runway. And so he'd be working the pedals and I'd be steering and changing gear. Makes me want to get a competition licence again.
It's quite quite amazing to think that it's almost 60 years since the little Vedol Lotus was last here, and we're probably only about 15 minutes away from being able to get back out on track. The feeling you get from coming to a race meeting it's just euphoric. It's not like anything else you do in your normal life. You build up to the event, you get to the event, all your friends are there that you don't normally see, but then all of a sudden you're just all focused on this passion for racing and the race cars and the engineering. It's just what makes us tick, it's what makes us motivated, and that's really what gets me up in the morning.